Hello, so I'm back. Just another video that I'm doing for you guys today. So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about my story, how I actually got into scalp micropigmentation or hair tattooing. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences briefly. Basically, it's just a short video for you guys that don't really know that much about me, just to give you an insight into how I really got into the game and stuff like that. So we're talking back in 2010, which is when I actually got my treatment done, but my hair loss journey actually started a little bit before then. I wasn't actually living in this country at the time. I was actually living away in the Caribbean. For you guys who are familiar with countries in the Caribbean, I was actually living in a country called Guyana. I'm half Guyanese and half Trinidadian, for you guys that don't know my heritage. So yeah, my mum's side of the family is from Guyana and my dad's side is from Trinidad and Tobago. Anyway, I was living out there for a little while. I was actually born here in the UK, but I lived out there for a little while. And hair loss is something that's run in my family for, well, say for a long time. Everyone in the family, all the guys in the family have had some form of hair loss. I can't really think of anyone, any males that haven't at the very least, had some sort of receding hairline or some balding crown or something like that. And that goes on my dad's side as well as my mum's side. So my granddad, uncles, cousins, pretty much everyone has experienced some sort of hair loss, even if not completely. So to be honest, there wasn't any getting away from it. The first time I noticed, or it was made aware to me, I should say, was actually by my barber. I was about 19 or 20 at the time when I was getting my hair cut, and he said to me, "Oh, I can notice that you've got a little sort of thinning patch at the top." I couldn't see it because it's not something I really paid attention to. Obviously, I was just looking always at the front of my face, but obviously he was cutting all over my head and he could actually see it. So that's when really I started to become a little bit self-conscious. It wasn't a big deal because it wasn't, again, I couldn't see it, so I didn't really process it in my mind that it was that much of a big deal. Anyway, so that was 19. I actually returned to the UK when I was 23, 24. Forgive my lack of knowledge there. I'm 33 now, so yeah, this is about 10 years ago when I returned to the UK. And unfortunately, as the, say, initial year sort of went by, I noticed that my hair was starting to get thinner and thinner. As most guys do, you start to sort of check on your diet, you start to, look at exercise, look at, are you using any sort of chemicals in your head, any sort of creams that you shouldn't be. I started looking at certain shampoos that were going to improve the condition of my scalp. That didn't really have that much of an effect. And after sort of researching hair loss properly at that point, I basically came across, obviously, understanding that it was more genetic, and I started adding up, the sort of things that I was coming across, and I was like, right, okay, so this is definitely male pattern baldness. This wasn't anything else that was going on. At that point, I did try to use what's a lot of people know as Regain. I think it's called Regain in America and Rogaine in the UK, or vice versa. But basically, you can have it as a liquid, which you just drop on your scalp and you sort of rub it in. I think it's once or twice a day. And then there was a foam version. I used the foam version because I found that much easier, less messy, and that sort of stuff. I did get results from it. But it became very tedious to use every day, and I basically sort of after a while just gave up on it. And what I noticed was that as soon as I stopped using it, my hair started to get thin again. So I was like, right, okay, this isn't really working for me, because if I'm gonna have to, if I want to keep my hair, obviously I have to keep using this. So my hair is becoming dependent on this, which wasn't really great for me. So I decided, look, I'm not going to use that anymore. I decided to, you know, search around and have a look and see what other solutions there was. I started to look at hair transplants. Hair transplants were very expensive. I was very wary of scars. Would I get the results that I wanted, especially being so young? Probably would have got the results I wanted at that time, but as time went on, if I was to lose more hair, which obviously now I know I was going to, what would I have done? Would I end up having to do more than one hair transplant? And back then, hair transplants were still quite pricey. I mean, looking at the prices back then, I remember prices being around like sort of 10,000, 12,000. If you went to America, you were going up into the 50s and 15s and the 20s. And that was if you wanted a really good doctor. Not to say the results weren't that great, but still I was sort of still researching, and I was like, well, if I am going to do a hair transplant, I'm going to have to save up a lot of money. But there was still sort of like a stigma attached to it as well. I'm young, do I really want to do a hair transplant? Is it a little bit vain? You know, you have all these thoughts in your head. And in general, you're thinking, well, as a guy, you're experiencing hair loss, why are you worrying about it? But I think it was just that whole, not necessarily shaving it off, because I was comfortable having a low cut sort of like style, but not having that prominent sort of hairline to sort of frame my face, I think was the biggest sort of thing for me. And that's one of the things that I tell my clients a lot. Like, I can appreciate, and they can appreciate when people say to them, oh, just shave it off. But if you don't have sort of like that shadow of the hairline left when you're shaving it, as someone who has a full head of hair would, it's a lot different. And people can only appreciate it when you can show like a side-by-side comparison. Anyway, through my research, it continued for a couple months, and I was looking into different options. I eventually found this treatment called micropigmentation. I can't remember the name of the company, but there was a company in America that were offering something very similar. However, they were using sort of like tattoo inks. So, like these inks, and their results weren't great because, yeah, it looked like original black at the start, but then as you know, with these tattoo inks, they can sort of give off like a greenish sort of tin. So that kind of put me off. But it had planted a seed in my head, and I had an idea, okay, so hair, like tattooing hair on did sort of exist, but it just wasn't perfected yet. So every so often I'd do like a Google search and just like hair tattoo or tattoo hair on or whatever I was searching for, I can't remember exactly, but something along those lines. And eventually I came across a company which anyone that's looking to get this treatment done and does quite a lot of research will probably find in their search, a company called His Hair. And they were doing it, and I remember going onto their website, and their results were pretty decent, to be honest. I was very, very interested. So, you know, I went down there, had a consultation, and eventually got my hair done. And this was back in 2010. Now, 2010, me being 23, 24, I went for a very sort of youthful, quite a strong sort of style. Not what you sort of see now, as I showed you in the previous video. Obviously now my hair is a little bit more natural, but before there was no sort of design, and it was like, it looked like very, you know, if you know Jamie Foxx, how his hairline's like super sharp, it was pretty much like that. Anyway, so yeah, I had my treatment done back in 2010. I think it was 2 initial sessions that I had. I went back a year later and got a little bit done on the sides, and I think I looked like a little touch up. So that was that at the time. My job around that time was actually working in a call center, so office based. And I started that job in 2008, around 2007, 2008, and around late 2012, early 2013, I was actually being made redundant from that job. So at that point, I was looking for a new job. So I reached out to the company that done my hair originally, his hair, and just kind of said, you know, I've got call center experience. Do you guys have like a little office, any admin work, that sort of stuff? I have experience in that, so, you know, do you have anything going? And they actually said, we're actually looking for an apprentice, like an apprentice technician, to actually work in London for them. It was something I'd never thought about before. I deem myself having a bit of an artistic flair, but I wouldn't have said that tattooing, all the tattoos you see on me now, all of these, I had none of them. Right, I've got 2 full sleeves now, as you can see. I've got tattoos on my chest, and yeah, there was none of that back then. So it wasn't really something that was in my mind, but I thought about it, and yeah, I said, you know what, why not? Why not try something different? I mean, I'd studied engineering in college and university, so that was quite different for me. I enjoyed it then, but never really followed it up as a career. So this was something new for me. And yeah, I did my initial training, my induction, sort of theory, practical, working side by side with more experienced guys. The guys that I actually trained with don't actually work with that company anymore. They actually went off and set up their own, which I'll get into in a second. But yeah, so I, you know, sort of, it was around about 3 months before I officially went off on my own. And I think one of the biggest sort of things about it was that it was a full-time role that I actually went into. So if you imagine, I was working sort of like 5 days a week with a 2-day off, and I was doing on average 2 or 3 sort of clients a day, and I was doing that, you know, continuously. So as you can imagine, my experience was building up, me doing that as a full-time role, and I started to see lots and lots of scenarios, lots of different people, different conditions, people from different backgrounds, all ethnicities you can imagine, all head shapes, all different sort of requirements clients would come in with. I learned a lot from just being in that role and doing that role full time. In 2014, early 2014, I took a sabbatical leave from my role, and I did a little bit of traveling. So I was away for about 8 to 10 months, did a little bit of traveling. At that point, I just sort of needed a career break because I'd never done the whole gap year thing after university. I'd always worked just continuously and just sort of like been looking after family and stuff like that. So yeah, so I took a break, went off traveling, and then decided to get back into the game after I'd come back. Now, coming back into the game, one of the biggest things for me is that I said to myself, look, working before full-time was great. However, it was very physically demanding, because you've got to think in this industry, in this job, you cannot have an off day. You cannot treat a new client who is unique and comes through the door and is basically putting their life in your hands and have an off day, essentially. And that does put a bit of pressure on you. So I sort of decided, you know what, I'd like to get back into the game, but how about I ease myself back into it, and I was going to sort of do it on a more self-employed sort of freelance basis. So at that time, when I eased back into the game, the same guys who had trained me up, a guy called Simon and a guy called Paul, who were really well respected in this industry, as well as many other people that I've worked with. But those two guys, obviously, I owe a bit to them because they trained me up. So I learned a lot practically from them. So yeah, I went and did a bit of struggling to say the word, consultancy work with them. So basically I was like doing consultations and handling like appointments, booking people in, because they were based in Birmingham and I had more of a presence in London at that time, so I was kind of like a London sort of based sort of consultant for them. So I did a bit of work for them, built up back, getting back into the flow of things, and then eventually I was ready to go back as a technician, going back to doing what I love. There was a lot of clients that were asking for me whilst I was away, and clients would say, "Oh, when you're coming back, I need to get my hair done." And if you think about it, it's like being a barber. Once you get your hair done by a particular guy and you've always known him and you built a relationship with him, it's like that. So you always want to go back to that person. So I spoke to the owners back at the original company, his hair that I was working with, a guy called Ian, who owns it with his sister-in-law, a lady called Rambir. Again, if you do your research, you'll probably come across all these names and all these companies. So again, those are two other people that obviously gave me a job when I first started as an apprentice, and they took me, welcomed me back in. So yeah, I went back there and did quite a bit of work again. Obviously I was not doing as much days and I was doing it on a freelance basis, which worked perfect for me. And again, just building up my experience, I was working in London. I've recently relocated personally, so some personal life changes took me from London last year up to Nottingham, which is where I'm based now. With me moving to Nottingham, I changed my working base from the London branch to the Birmingham branch. So yeah, I was working there from last year up until January, February this year. Went away again on another holiday, and decided at that point it was time really for me to move on. I then joined another company, a company called Shave and Look, which you probably will come across in your research. And I've been working with them for a while, but whilst working with them, also on a freelance basis, I started to, and this is after even talking with clients and family and stuff like that, I was like, look, do you know what? I've got the talent, I've got the skill now, I've experienced hair loss myself, I've had the treatment done, I pretty much feel, I'm experienced, I'm confident, I know what I'm doing. I think it's time for me to sort of branch off on my own and do my own thing. Hence where I'm at now. So a month or two back, it was a decision that I made, I'm going to start my own brand of sort of, micropigmentation, the offering. Obviously I gave it the name, decided to call it S&P by Marcus, so that's personal to me. And that's where I'm at. So it's in the initial stages. I'm sitting here looking back at how it was when I started. I'm also probably going to look back at this video in a couple of years, hopefully, and I'm going to work towards making that a reality. Look back and say, do you know what, you made the right decision to sort of branch off on your own. I've been encouraged to do so many times. For whatever reason, I didn't think I was ready. Obviously, I'd still had contracts in place with companies I was working for and stuff like that. But I think moving into you know, this career has been one of the most refreshing things that I've done. I've stepped out and tried my hands in a few other things occasionally, and it just hasn't worked for me. I've just realised this is something I really enjoy doing. The biggest sort of like satisfaction I'd say I get from this is when I've done someone's treatment and, you know, you say, all right, have a look in the mirror, and they look in that mirror and you just see, whether it's, most times it's a smile, but sometimes people get choked up. I've had a few people cry, and it's just giving people back that feeling that I had when I first had my, you know, hair done, and, you know, I felt so great about myself. My confidence came back. Not that I wasn't a confident person at the time, but just little things, you know, it helps. And yeah, that's one of the biggest things. And I say to people when they come in as a new person, look, I understand not everyone's going to be happy and excited to go ahead. Some people are going to be anxious, some people are going to be nervous, some people are absolutely bricking it, and some people are going to, you know, be thinking, am I doing the right thing? I do not rush anyone into doing this, whether it's at a consultation or whether it's on the day. I've turned people away on the day. I've said to people, look, you're not ready. Give yourself another couple of weeks, get your head set. It's a big sort of thing that you're jumping into. And the simplest analogy that I can use is that with these tattoos here, you can, if they go wrong, you can cover them up with a shirt, but it's your head with a micropigmentation or a hair tattoo, and you can't just cover that up so easily. I'm not saying it's going to go wrong. I mean, in my time, I can honestly, hand on heart, say probably had 2 treatments that didn't really go that great for me, and even then I was able to salvage at least one of them without having to revert to laser. So because it's a process and we're building up session by session, occasionally things will go wrong, occasionally I might get my judgment wrong, but it's never something that I cannot save. I'm always safety first. I'm always erring on the side of caution in terms of my colours that I use, the hairlines that I recommend people go for, always conservative. I never jump in. I say to people, look, do your research, take your time, and trust your technician. People ask me, like, where can it go wrong? I say, essentially 3 things. If the hairline isn't right, that's where you can go wrong. That can stand out and people will know that you've had something done. If you try to go too dark most times, so the colour, that's where it can go wrong. And the third time is when you don't listen to your technician. I understand some people have an idea in their head of what they want it to look like, but the reality versus what you've envisaged in your head sometimes doesn't match up. You've got to remember that a lot of us in this game, especially experienced, been doing it 4 or 5 years. I've been doing it 6 years now. I've seen pretty much everything. I've seen treatments that have settled over 2 years, over 3 years, over a week, over 2 weeks, whatever. So I have a good idea of, you know, what something might look like further down the line, whereas you wouldn't. So you're seeing the immediate picture, but I can envisage something much further, and that's why I say trust your technician. Now, trust your technician to a point, however, also trust your gut instinct. If you go to a consultation or you're meeting, whether it's, depending on how it's set up, sometimes you don't meet your technician right away, you might meet like an admin person who does the consultation and then passes you on to the technician. But whoever you're speaking to, ask as many questions as you can. There's never too many questions, there's never a silly question. I have it all, and I don't mind repeating, because at the end of the day, I'd rather you ask me than you stay at home not asking me a question about the treatment. You do something silly and you ruin it, because then it looks bad on me. So yeah, just going back to it, just trust your gut instinct. If you ask something and you don't feel comfortable with what the person's saying to you or how they're saying it to you, or maybe someone's being quite pushy, at that point, just trust your instinct. If it doesn't feel right, just don't do it. Even if you need some more time and you're not 100% sure, you need family support or whatever. I always tell my clients, look, I've got no problem. Bring your missus, bring your brother, bring your friend, whoever, no problem at all. And I think one of the biggest things for me, my level of honesty, even though sometimes I might lose a client or turn a client away, my level of honesty, because I'm very straightforward, is one of the biggest things about myself and why my brand is building the way it is, because I don't sugarcoat anything. I tell people as it is, and a lot of the time people sometimes are disappointed, but they realize that I was speaking the truth, and they rather that than they go away happy on the day, but then 3, 4, 5 weeks later they come back and say, look, what is this, what's happened, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you just be honest? You don't want to be caught in that situation at all. Anyway, I'll sidetrack a little bit, but that's just really speaking about my experience. So I had my head done in 2010. I've been doing this now for 6 years. So started first time in 2012. As I said, when I had my head done in 2010, it was quite a strong defined style. I did change it up. And I did that through the company that I was working with. So that was, at the time, his hair. We did a little bit laser, took some of the definition off, softened it up. As I said, I went away for a bit, did some traveling. I spent some time with family in the Caribbean. I also went to America for a bit. In terms of experience as well, now thinking about that, I have worked, obviously I've worked for a few different clinics, but I have worked in a few different locations. I had a really good year where I spent some time in New York and also in Canada, in Toronto. That was a really, really good experience. And one of the biggest things I learned from that is different expectations from clients. You find that your clients in America and in Canada a bit more particular about maybe the hairline. You get a lot more people going for a lot more youthful styles, a lot more trendy, whereas in the UK it's a lot more reserved. I'd say in the UK people very, what should I say? In my experience, I've had a lot more clients who have been very sort of affected by their hair loss, where in America it's a bit more, I didn't really need to do it, but I just want to be fashionable. Not to say that there weren't clients like that, but you know, just comparing them. So that was a really good experience for me. I've dealt with alopecia, I've dealt with women's hair loss, I've dealt with hair transplant scars, accident scars, I've dealt with burns, all types of skin, you name it, people that have worn hair systems, that have had them glued on, sewn on, all that sort of stuff. And it's really, really interesting to see. Yeah, trying to think. The youngest person that I've done personally was a 16-year-old boy who came to see me from Germany. As far as I'm aware, the youngest client that I know that's been treated at any company that I've worked at was 14, and that's with parental sort of backing. The eldest client I've had, I've had a 56 and a 65, and very recently I think I had a 71. The eldest I've known at any company I've worked at, I think was 72. So I've had a wide variety. Most of my clients genuinely fall in between, say about 25 to mid to late 30s. All sorts of ethnicities, to be completely honest with you. What you find, sometimes you get more of more of a specific ethnicity depending on where you're working. So in London you'd have quite a mix of, let's say, a lot more black guys I've had, and a few white guys, whereas when I worked in Birmingham I had a lot more Asian guys. as I've come up north into Nottingham, I've had quite a lot of my clients were like older white gentlemen, sort of middle-aged white gentlemen, so I've had that quite a bit. The women that I've treated, apart from one, have all been sort of like Afro-Caribbean, Afro-British women with sort of like alopecia. I did treat one lady in the US, in New York. She was like half white, half Latino. She wasn't alopecia, she was like thinning down the middle. So yeah. So yeah, quite a lot of experience with different people there. I've had 2 people faint on me. Nothing dramatic, just like sort of pass out for a couple of seconds. When I do the FAQ video, which I'm going to do in a little while, I just need to, obviously I'm still getting questions coming in, so keep those questions coming in, guys, and I'll obviously pick like the top 20 or something and go through them. But you'll hear me I know a lot of people ask, like, how do I prepare? Do I need to eat a certain thing or anything? Just make sure you're well rested and you have a good breakfast. Maybe just bring a chocolate bar or a sweet or something sugary, and like a Lucozade or any drink with you, because a lot of people panic, they don't eat, and then obviously they fade away when I say fade away, they pass out during the session, just all the pressure of everything that day. And remember, I'm obviously poking into your head, so that shocks the body as well, and it just goes into overdrive. But nothing major have I had. Obviously I'm first aid trained, which is obviously a basic that's requirement for anyone that's doing this. So yeah, I think I've pretty much covered everything about my experience. A lot of it now is for me is where I go from here. Obviously, I'm doing these videos to sort of give you guys an insight into me initially, what I'm about, and then, as I said in my introduction video, I'm going to sort of divulge, and we're going to speak to my clients, do a few interviews, and one of the biggest things I want to do with you guys is like a vlog where I'm going to take you out on a sort of like a day with me, so you can kind of see what a typical day when I'm doing one of my mobile treatments is like, so I'll do that, but all in good time. If there's anything I've missed, any questions that you have, just add it in the comment section below. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you have a YouTube subscription, please subscribe, and share the video. If you do have anything like Facebook, Instagram, anything like that, share the video for me. And like I said, any comments that you have are quite helpful. Obviously I do these videos just offhand, so sometimes I might forget some things. I'm probably going to come off this video and remember, oh damn, I should have talked about that. But anyway, any comments, if anything comes up and I think it warrants another separate video, I will do that. But right, so my day is finished here. I had an afternoon treatment, just a little touch up, a little rectification. Someone that had not such great hairline from someone else, so he's come to me to rectify it. I've been getting quite a lot of those lately, so I might even do a video on that. But yeah, my day's finished, so I'm heading home now, and yeah, I'm gonna end things here. But yeah, that's it for sort of like my journey, my experience, what I've gone through, and how I'm here today. So yeah, it was great talking to you guys, and I will see you on the next video. I got my black gloves on, my working gloves. Peace, guys. Take care.